as a nation declines, so does its leaders. You can see this in ancient history. For instance, Rome is a prominent example. You can see this in modern times. The United States is a good example of that. If no matter the political party you're in, you look at the first six leaders we've had versus the last six, there is a night and day difference. No matter who you ask, almost everyone would agree. And you can also see this with the nation of Israel. Now, Israel has had many judges. Othniel, I believe, was maybe the best judge that they've had. Jephthah is the counterexample. He is probably the worst. He's a man of action and violence. How did he get to be this way? Well, he was an illegitimate son, kicked out of his parents' household, and he surrounded himself with men of action and violence. Now, this is just what Israel thought that they needed at this time to defeat the Ammonites that were encroaching in the land. They cried out to God, they repented, they looked for a leader, and they chose him, agreeing that they would become his followers even after the battle. Now, Jephthah, as he approaches the Ammonites, after he does a bit of diplomacy, which ultimately fails, he lifts up a very rash vow. Now, God doesn't want Israel to make vows, but some do anyway. If you make your vow, you need to keep it, unless it's sin. And here he does sin. He isn't perhaps thinking, or perhaps he is exactly thinking and just that far fallen. And he says the first thing that comes out of the door of his tent when he gets home after this victory, he will offer as a burnt sacrifice. The wording is very clear. This is not just a nice sacrifice that he can pay for, pay recitation to. He plans to kill something and burn it. He's not expecting an animal because that would not be a very great sacrifice for a leader. One little animal. Instead, leaders typically would offer hundreds of animals. He is expecting to offer, it seems, a person. Now, in his mind, perhaps he's thinking a slave or a servant, but to his horror, he sees his daughter, his only child, come to the door of his tent. Instead of inquiring of God and making sure that that's right, which it's not, or asking the high priest, he instead gives his daughter time to mourn and then murders her, kills her as a burnt offering. This is something that the nations before Israel were judged for brutally because some of them participated in human sacrifice. The Israelites will later do this towards the end of their time as well. And this is abhorrent to the Lord. He is a horrible leader, a man of action and violence, which isn't always bad, but he doesn't think. He just does. And that is a horrible flaw to have as a leader.